welcome back to the Talk Past podcast. With me today, of course, is a good friend and medieval combat choreographer, cosplayer, and you can find him on Instagram as Caleb's_cosplay. But thank you for taking the time and being here.
Hey, it's glad to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Indeed, you were in the first episode with the Assassin's Creed thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was first. Which, of course, I've still not finished that game at all. I'm like maybe 15% clear, but I do a lot of like the side quests and sort of just world things.
Yeah. If you're playing at your own pace, there's no shame in that.
Indeed, I actually restarted the game um, as a female to see what that perspective was like, and
Yeah.
also to go back and to the earlier areas and actually fully 100% complete them. Because my first run through, I just kind of tried to clear the entire whole of the continent, and
Oh,
then
really?
kind of pick and choose things. Um, but as soon as I realized the female perspective is literally the same as the male, just your head model is female, I just kind of switched
Right.
it back. But anywho, have you finished that?
I have. I haven't played the DLCs, but I have completed Valhalla, and you know, everyone's experience is different. I liked it at first, but then as I went back in my head and I realized what I did, what the story was about. I'm not going to say any spoilers, but the character's own journey. I was a little disappointed
Mhm.
in the lack of development, at least to me. Some people may say otherwise.
Right.
But it was a beautiful game, and I thought the costuming was pretty cool. Some of it was a little garish,
Yeah, I
a
mean
little
it's
bit
definitely
out of the world.
anachronistic.
Yes,
At least absolutely on the Viking end. But
yeah,
same. Obviously I haven't finished it, so I can't say in terms of the complete story. But I don't really play for story.
mhm,
I kind of play the game to play the game, and then I go back and like watch the story.
right,
Because when you're playing, at least for me, whether it's Pokemon or this or something, it's really annoying. You have to spend 10 minutes listening or reading something. So I kind of I go through the game and then I watch the story. But
mm.
I know what happens, or at least what you have to do to get the story they want you to have, and I feel it's very limiting considering all that
Yeah.
they're giving you.
If it's an open world game, and stuff is level gated, I feel like that really disrupts the flow of someone's personal gaming
Yeah.
experience. Like they should be able to go to any part, without really progressing the story. And then if they want to focus on the story, then like, okay, well, I know I can go here at any
Hmm.
time. So, but I feel like level gating is a big issue in open world RPGs.
Right.
But that's a whole another topic for a whole another time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
But of course, in regards to that, of course, just to put a quick plug in here, I am I've released not released, but I just finished the first publication for the channel, an e-magazine, which will release at least once a month on every last Friday, exclusive to Patreon. The first one, it's a 10 to 12 page spread, depending on the content or how I want to make sure it's parceled out. But the first one is based on, of course, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. A little bit half and half in terms of the game, a review of the game, some content from the game based on historical matters, and then the other half is actual just delving into the history of Vikings in relation to Valhalla, like a timeline that merges from real history to the gameplay, and then continuing that, but with characters that are historical figures in the game, like Alfred, Guthrum, Beowulf, etc. That's on
oh, cool.
Patreon for the $5 people, whatever. It'll unlock every last Friday of the month from Assassin's Creed, Yule. Of course, it'll be a spread on the Sarasota Medieval Fair, and the next one after that, next month is King Arthur, so on and so forth. But more importantly, let's delve into what we do and what you do specifically. Obviously, we both do what I mentioned, the Medieval Fair. So what I've asked everybody, because it's always fascinating to know, is how did you get into it? How did you get into the show that we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first year was 2010. I was 14 years old. It was King Arthur year, one of the King Arthur years. It was Return to Avalon. Um, I I don't quite remember how I heard of it. I think my parents heard of it, my mother specifically, and she was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. Would you like to do this?" And I said, "Sure." I'd always been really outgoing, really into the acting scene, even at that age. But the improvisation part was definitely a challenge for me. But I can't imagine doing anything else now. I love doing improvisation acting. Um, but yeah, and I went to the auditions. I brought a polyurethane plastic sparring sword, but it was a katana. And I thought that that would be the coolest thing ever. But when I got there, I wasn't laughed at, but I was told like, well, no, this is medieval, not Japanese medieval. So that
Yeah,
was a quick learning curve. I just thought
it
that was a funny
definitely
bit of trivia.
definitely would be historical if you were doing Japanese though, as
Of
they
course,
did have a
yes,
medieval period, um,
yes.
which I wish we
Um,
would do one day. So obviously, a couple things to tab on there. I was the same way in terms of the improv. I don't, I didn't have much difficulty with it, so much as just not knowing anybody and being very deeply uh, introverted and sort of sheltered. Um, but our show, or at least our people, definitely kind of brings that out of you. I remember, and I'd like to ask if you had a moment as well, because I had two. But obviously, I discussed on the podcast my incident with the lane fight that I had, which was a group of us, and we had Dean, our director, come in on his stallion and kill us all or beat us all up when we were trying to burn up Guinevere at the stake. And nobody knew what they were doing, even though we knew we were doing this for 3 months. Granted, we only had like 3 times where we rehearsed it, but all the same, it was pretty cut and dry concept. Rile the crowd up, and we'll come kill you. But secondly, uh, Dean caught me in the lanes once, and obviously his character was uh, committing adultery with Guinevere, at least in
mm,
terms of that was the rumor. And my character, as well as Dave, not the one mentioned previously, were supposed to have been in Arthurian legends to the characters that found out about it. And of course,
oh
so
wow.
I was always very standoffish with them and Guinevere, but probably a little more so than I should have. But of course, it takes time for you to understand medieval decorum and social standings and stuff like that, right? But
Yeah.
he made attempts to help guide me out of that shell in the lanes. To you got something to say, and stuff like that. Speak up. But have you ever had any moment like that when you were starting out, where someone tried to help you out, or you had a moment like the lane fight thing where you kind of had to step up?
Yeah. From Arthur year especially, I remember my first big improv thing was a big rule of the Sarasota Medieval Fair is you can't
Mhm.
say okay because that's anachronistic. People didn't say okay; they said,
Mhm.
um, excellent,
Oh,
well, or all right.
yeah.
Um, but as a 14-year-old kid, first time acting, I had a pretty shoddy English accent, and I slipped up and I said okay,
Yeah.
and the jester he was near me and he looked at me and he starts going on a tirade, a joking tirade, not like actually angry, but and he was being all, how could you, what is this magical word, how dare you say that, I think you're a witch, I believe you should go marry that tree. And I had to go and profess my undying love to a tree in the middle of the lanes, and that tree is still there at the old fairgrounds at the old Robarts Arena. And every year I would pass by and be like, my darling, my darling wife, good to see you again. And it just stuck with me every year.
That is your tree.
It's my tree, and anyone who touches it, I would get very angry. But that was definitely my first big. Oh wow, I really need to step up
Learn.
and improv, and not mess up in the lanes, But of course, we have the saying, "Dare to suck." You don't really mess up, but there
Yeah.
are there are ways to break yourself out of the shell, and sometimes it's through uh, acceptable humiliation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a winding road of debate in terms of
Mhm,
how to handle things like that. I guess
mhm.
anachronisms and reenactisms, my favorite new word, that I really want to delve down.
Reenactism.
Yeah, because reenactisms is something that we do, you, I, our group, and other reenactment groups, SCA, LARP, etc., etc. But very specifically, we'll say reenactment groups like a Viking reenactments and medieval
Yeah,
and Civil War, whatever. Things that we do specifically that aren't particularly historical or
yeah,
maybe proper to do. However, it's things that we've kind of realized works or is sort of like pushing the boundary. Like say like a Civil War reenactor making something by hand, like sewing it, and they make a pocket that is big enough to fit their phone and their keys, right? That would be a
yes.
reenactism. Or us, very specifically, and we're going to discuss this too because we did it, but doing Scottish year and
Oh yeah, I knew
wearing
that would come up.
kilts.
Yep.
Wearing kilts. That's deeply
Hmm.
anachronistic. However, that said, I think it's forgiven as a reenactism because if you go out as anything other than someone wearing a kilt or a tartan in general, uh, no one's going to know that you're Scottish.
Right. The
So,
general public doesn't have the knowledge that kilts didn't exist until 17, 1800s.
mhm.
Um, and if you are advertised, you're given an advertisement for English versus Scottish, and you're like, oh, cool, I get to go out and see kilts, and then you get there, and everyone's wearing the same clothing, and the only differential is their accents. You're going to be pretty disappointed. You go to see the kilts as a patron, so yeah, I agree with you. That's something that can be forgiven as a reenactism, pending.
Yeah, yeah. Um, of course, you do the next year, which I always forget these next 2 years. I always forget what they are. It's Cressy came after Peasant Revolt. Did you do Peasant Revolt?
Yes, so I did. There were a few years that I missed. I've been acting in the Sarasota Medieval Fair on and off for about 7 years, since 2010. So it was Arthur year in
Mhm,
2010. It was Peasant Revolt in 2011, and then it was um, Irish in 2012.
mhm.
And I missed that year. I don't know. I think I was younger and I was a little tired of it, and I just wanted to take a break.
Yeah,
Then it was Cressy in 2013, which I enjoyed very much. And then Magyar year was another year I missed. That was 2014.
yeah.
Um,
You see, the one that I always forget is Irish year because I forgot it
oh
again.
yeah,
Saying peasant to Cressy
yeah,
when it was peasant Irish Cressy. I always forget the
yeah.
Irish year. I don't know why. But yeah, no, I feel you. Sometimes you like the past 2 years. Honestly, I'm feeling that I need to be there. I need to be doing this because we love doing this. But
Mhm.
at least last year, it was nice to have the year off. And now it's still nice to have the year off. But I definitely want to do it. Uh,
You have the itch.
I felt like reaching out to local people, like adopt me, adopt me.
Yeah.
I'm a wayward reenactment child.
I need my temporary loving home to satisfy the itch. Yeah, I got you.
Couple questions though, because so you did peasant. You didn't do Irish, but on peasant, did you play your peasant character that you did in King Arthur year? Because you've been kind of doing that a couple times.
Yeah, in Arthur year, I was a squire, which was actually pretty, high standing to a
Yeah.
to a knight. And then I was at the lowest of lows for 2011 and 2013. I played a beggar named Grub slash Filth. I think Filth is more known, but I had Grub as well. And that character was so much fun to play as a younger teenager. I had a lot of freedom. Back then, the rules weren't as so we're progressive, up to date. Yeah, I'll say up to date. Basically, as a minor, I really didn't have all that much supervision. Obviously, people still kept an eye on me, and I was safe. But
Right.
as a beggar, I kind of shuffled back and forth between events. I would like shuffle through the crowds and beg for things, and I actually begged for money, and people gave me money. It was the funniest thing ever. And
Yeah.
if you want to delve into bits later on, I can tell one of my most famous bits. Um, but yeah, I played a beggar those 2 years. It just worked out
Indeed.
that way.
Well, we'll go ahead and tell it since it's related to the character. I
Okay.
assume it's the bit for the character, Filth.
Yes. So not for 2011. I was still finding my footing. I was still learning how to do bits. How to create things, create ideas, and act them out. But in 2013 was when I really grew out of my shell, out of my improv shell. Uh, I created this sign, this tarp with mounted to a stick. I painted the words, "Just died, need money for burial," and I would shuffle out into the lanes at like right at opening gate. I would stick that sucker in the ground, and I would collapse. I would die in front of it with my cup on my chest, open, ready to receive payment. And I would literally fall asleep. And every time I woke up, the cup would be full. I would shuffle off into the back, into the green room, dump the money in the backpack, go out and do it again, over and over. And people on cast were a little bit upset. They were like, "How are you getting so much money just from lying there?" I'm like, I don't know.
It's the
It's
simplest
a
things.
it's the simplest thing, and I thought it would be funny. I thought it wouldn't really go anywhere. I think people would just. I originally thought people would just laugh at it, be like, "Ah, haha, that's funny." But people put money in the cup. I think that to this day, I still am just blown away by that simple fact that people stopped, read the sign, looked at me, and were like, "Yeah, sure. Let me drop a quarter in there." It was so
If
so much fun.
I mean, if someone gives you that for doing that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. It's sort of it's definitely a compliment. And you
Yeah.
know what? Anyone that complains, you know, think of something simple and do it. There's been other
Mm,
people in our show and other shows that have just kind of thought of something random, and for some reason it works.
yep. Yeah. So to this day, it's probably my best bit that I ever came up with, and that was in 2013. I was what, 16, 17
2013
at the
Christmas,
time?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, haha.
Well, that the strange thing though, just a funny historical sidebar and a sort of self-reflection. Obviously, we
Mm,
did the we started it the same year in 2010. I was 22 at the time. I'm now going on 34,
oh
and
wow.
watching you, Key, and the others who were 10 or so at the time, 14 to 10
The
at the
Squire
time,
group. Yeah.
and now y'all are adults drinking ale and kicking butt and going to Disney, and I'm just like, what? Do I look old now? Am I the old person now? I like to think I look the same, but you tend to, as people grow up, like obviously our Joan from last year, you kind of
Yeah.
start realizing age is happening.
Yeah. It's
Age
it's
happens.
I'm feeling it now. I'm 25 now,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely feeling it. I'm like, oh man, I did this 11 years ago, and I'm still going on.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a surreal experience looking back on what you did, every year. Um, but I think it's a compliment.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be able to grow up in this environment and to watch people come and go. Stick with the same people. I I didn't know that you started the same year I did. I thought you've been doing it for much longer. So that's
Not at all.
impressive, man.
I
That's
did
really cool.
the I did the Harry Potter show before,
Yeah.
because I moved down December 2019 December 14th, 2019, 2009, because I'm already in the 2020s.
Yeah.
They were doing a Harry Potter show for the opening of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Oh, that's cool.
No, that was the second one. They were doing it for a Harry Potter convention, and I
Yeah.
just happened to have been brought in by uh, Shannon, and
Oh,
'cause
nice.
I knew someone at the time that was doing it, and I just showed up. I didn't start doing it because of them. In fact, they tried to actively stop me from doing it, but we won't discuss them. But Shannon was like, "Oh, you should do this," and then Dean was like, you gonna show up and do the medieval fair too?" I'm just like, "Yeah, sure, whatever."
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like, "Yeah,
why not?
whatever."
Yeah.
And then it really was. I attribute that to Shannon, Dean, and Dave. Dave was just like, he was just so welcoming. He was just like, "Yeah, no, you're a part of the family now." And this was
Yeah.
at the Harry Potter show. Uh, and he was like, "You should do the festival. I'll drive you there, and then play D&D with us." So I attribute Dave to getting me into everything. Um,
That's awesome.
but it's surreal, doing this for 10 years and then seeing how a group tightens, and then how the acquaintances kind of come and go, and then how other people just kind of like move off into other parts of their lives.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of, when was your next character, your next show that you did that was something different than being the beggar?
Yeah, that was 2015's Scottish versus English. It was
Yes, yes.
Robert the Bruce. I played Walter Stewart, the sixth Grand or High Stewart of Scotland. Yeah,
Hmm.
um, and that was at the time the highest like authority role that I had. And Tony, our friend Tony, played Robert the Bruce, and him and I just caused so much mischief and havoc. Like on one side, we had the English court, and it consisted of like 10 people, and that's it. Like we would just run around,
Yeah.
we would do crazy things as two Scottish lords. We would run over, make fun of the English, scuttle away, make some jokes. It was I was so comfortable that year. We just had such a good time. To this day, it's probably not the most fun I've had is the next year we did, but I think it was the most comfortable I was. I just felt in my comfort zone. I had so much fun that year. It was definitely different. It was a step up from being a beggar. I had more. I had an image to keep as the character. I actually had to be a historical character. Walter Stewart. He was a young lad historically during the time of Robert the Bruce. He was like 18, but he had like a ton of. He was like second in command basically.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool character to do, and I was very flattered and grateful to be able to play him.
What year was Bannockburn? Now that I think about it, my
Like
mind is always,
historically,
yeah.
it was 1314.
Oof. My mind
Yeah.
is always set in the 800s, the ninth century. So anything else we do, I tend to forget what year it was.
Yeah.
1300s.
Once
Yeah,
you get
that's
into the
pretty.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, once you get into the double digits for the medieval times, it's like, when was the Renaissance? When did this happen? Life was so much simpler back then, It's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
But of course, 1300s is pretty much your cliche medieval perfect time frame for medieval. And then I
yeah,
think, I think in my opinion, the 1500s, which is kind of like the end cap of the medieval period, was sort of like
right.
when it became a meme of itself. That was the decade that was just the meme medieval,
Yeah,
and then it became the
yeah.
Renaissance.
It was like,
Yeah,
look at what we used to do. We used to sit around, by in huts. Now we have all this grand architecture. Oh, we were a bunch of slobs back then.
yeah, and everything
Yeah,
they had that they needed 1300 down just kind of became decorum. Like castles were
right.
starting to become nothing but decorative pieces for rich people to show off their money. Shields were
Yeah.
no longer necessary; they were just painted objects.
As
Swords
soon
were
as yeah, as soon as gunpowder was invented, shields became immediately obsolete. They're like, oh well, We don't need
Same
these
thing.
anymore.
Same thing with plate armor. Swords became
Yeah.
completely obsolete and was nothing more than decorative. Chainmail was decorative, and everyone
Mm,
had plate mail and drinking beer, riding their horses, doing king's tournaments.
mm.
Basically, everyone was a Lannister. Uh, but going back into Scottish because that was a great year. Um,
Oh yeah.
although my comfort year was Viking era, but going back into Scottish, what sort of because you played a historical character, I did as well. I was John Cummin.
Mm.
That was probably the first time I had to and wanted to do any sort of historical looking up. But what did you draw from actual history to use for your character, Walter Stewart?
Um, historically, Bruce's daughter was captured by the English, and Walter Stewart was set to marry her. And so I based it was a bit of a meme, but I was trying to I wasn't trying to be too serious with the character. I was trying to look cool. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a historical character. I'm second in command. I got to look cool. But then out of nowhere, there I think there was a joke that was, oh, you're really sad about my daughter being captured, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah. And the idea that Walter Stewart was a big crier was born, and that was the biggest. I think the biggest joke about that character was that he was always crying. He was always sad about, he would always scream, "Marjorie, I need you back. Where are you?" Um, always using tissues. So it was a good balance of seriousness and silliness, and that's probably the biggest thing I took away historically to use for that character. Um, Other than that, there wasn't much that I used historically besides being second in command and helping, because he was so young at that time. There wasn't much that he had done yet to really prove himself. So I think that was the biggest historical thing that I used to create the character.
Yeah, because then sometimes you have a historical figure that's well known. In my case, John Cummin or King Alfred later on, but you're doing a specific time frame, a specific battle, a specific day, and so you kind of can only go up to a certain point if that person continued on. Like Alfred
Yeah.
continued on. Um, John Cummin, I think, died, so that's all right. But Walter, I don't know, so I'm going to ask, obviously, if anything happened to him further on after Bannockburn.
He actually he like started the line of Scottish kings after that. Like,
Touche.
Marjorie, his wife, unfortunately died 2 years after Bannockburn. She died riding on a horse, but was able to give him, I believe, two sons. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I researched him, but Walter Stewart was basically the starting point for the line of royalty for Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh man, Walter Stewart's really got it going on. But it's funny that you mentioned like, there's only so much that you can portray a character up to a certain point. That actually really applies to the character I played for 2019's Joan of Arc scenario, and
Yeah.
we don't have to jump there yet. But I just wanted to point that out. That that's a really good point, and I actually had to work around that kind of odd timing. So.
Yeah, no, same with Alfred.
Mhm.
Obviously to the point of Eddington, but he did more. Editing was literally like the launching point of that person. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
so, but of course, uh, to sort of cap the Scottish year, uh, that was also for me the year where I was no longer like random soldier number whatever. So I actually got to play a historical character. That was nice. I hope to, if you're ever listening to this, I hope to play a historical character again rather than rando number 2002. I love playing characters where you can just be yourself, no, not be yourself,
Yeah,
but make up yourself. But I'm kind of ready to settle down and be told what to do.
right.
But in terms of that, and you were a very high status character, I was as well, but obviously a traitor to Scots, so I kind of
Yes,
no
that
longer
was your.
no longer have that status. But
So
speaking of, to end cap that, so did you have a fight that year?
I did. It was the first year I did the human combat chess match. I decided, hey, I'm an adult now. I can, or at least I'm not a minor anymore. I can go out and I can actually do the rehearsals necessary every weekend for 3 months, and I did it, and I enjoyed it. I won best, I think best male fighter, first time fighter,
Yeah.
and I was blown away. I was like, wow, and I was pretty honored. So
Well, for you, I mean, just from a perspective of seeing you go from obviously being a kid to as I cough, growing up, and then of course general to not doing the show to coming back.
mhm.
You coming back and seeing someone who previously didn't do something to suddenly stun everybody as if you literally just if the snap of my finger is heard, get it? Like you just kind of get
Yeah.
it. For me, it took 4 years, and even still, you're always learning. You're always learning. No one's ever mastered it, but
Oh
to
yeah.
finally have the package of both getting down the techniques necessary to earn a fight and the acting necessary to earn a fight. Sometimes people that get a fight don't have both, but at least if you have one or you fit the scenario, whatever, let's delve down that path some other time. But that was the first time that we all noticed that you just wowed everybody by just getting it without having any of the experience to be that good.
Wow.
So
I appreciate that. It's very flattering. Thank you.
a roundabout way of saying to some people it comes naturally, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of leads once you wow people, that kind of leads to let's make this dangly toy to give you at the end of the year.
Dangly toy. Well, I still have
Yeah.
it, and I
Hmm.
display it proudly. But
Yeah. Like
yeah,
I've never won any of those. I never strive to, but I think if I ever do, I want it to be some like weird frivolous thing,
yeah.
like just some
This
one of those random awards.
yeah, the
Like
weird ones that are like, you coughed this day on on chess match.
yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah,
hmm he showed up on this day,
he showed up. Yeah,
and it's literally the prize is just like a picture of me showing up that day or something.
like a
Or it's,
weird gross picture too.
yeah,
Like
it's
you're
which
picking
is
your
every
nose.
picture of
Yeah.
me. Yeah, which is every picture of me. I made a point of Viking year, King Alfred year, that I did not
Yeah.
want good photos of me taken.
Oh.
I very specifically did weird poses or hid or did like the Batman with the cape thing,
Yeah.
and I normally am like that way. I don't like having my picture taken unless I'm taking it. Um,
Right.
but I was very specifically like, I'm going to make this king photo messed up this year. Let Zach let Zach shine and let him have all the stalwart photography. Let me be the weird creeper, not creeper, but the person that's just kind of
Right.
hunched over like the bat in the belfry.
Well, Alfred was sickly as well, so it kind
Yeah,
of works that way. Like he
yeah.
was, he hid in dark places. He was sickly. He couldn't really, put his face in the sun a lot. So it makes sense. Yeah,
He was a vampire.
he was a vampire
I'm
historically.
not
It's fact.
not yeah.
Don't question us.
The Vikings were werewolves and the Saxons were vampires, and that's what had to happen. But they were
And
Christian
that's how
vampires.
Underworld started. They were
They were
Christian. That's
Christian.
right.
They were
That's
turned, so the cross didn't hurt them. It empowered
didn't
them.
affect them.
Of course. Who did you fight that year?
Uh, I fought Jera.
Okay.
I forgot what character he played, but he played like a really high-ranking Englishman, who was
Hmm.
super cocky, super arrogant, and it was like Walter's time to prove himself, and I had a fantastic fight with him. I did a lot of disarmings, a lot of rolls because I thought rolls would be cool. Um,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until the last weekend when Bruce turned to me, because the way our fight starts is, one of the English generals is captured and basically chained up, and Jera's character goes over and starts taunting him, and he tells me, the second in command to the king, to wait while he goes and taunts. And I didn't get it in my head that that was like the most offensive thing you could do to a royal at that time. And Bruce turns around and looks at me on the last weekend and goes, Walter, he's insulting you to your face. You need to get angry. You need to get out there and yell at him. And I kid you not, I saw red, and I go out there and I just start screaming at him and saying, how dare you? How dare you ignore me? I am Walter Stewart, the Sixth High Steward of Scotland. You do not ignore me. And I think I said a curse word. I didn't realize it at the time, but Dean pulled me aside and said, hey, good job. Let's keep the curse words out. I was like, oh, what'd I say?
Yeah. I mean, coming from Feck and then my Hail Satan crap, and then I said prick in as so okay. So I said prick as Alfred, which is not really. At least I don't think there's much of a I'm very self-conscious right now running the channel.
Right.
In terms of language, but and then immediately after, Guthrum goes, "This is."
I don't remember that. That was.
But you know what?
Oh my gosh.
A lot of that stuff tends to go over people's heads. Maybe one person or two or a producer might get it, but it's.
Well, I said.
What did you say?
I said shite. I was like, you piece of shite, and I charged. And so apparently that got everyone on the Scottish side like rolling with laughter. Like they were trying so hard to keep a serious face. But then we did our fight, and Jared pulled me aside and told me that was the fastest I had ever moved. Like he was working to keep up with me. It had been the opposite the whole time we've been practicing. But so yeah, that was my first fight, and it was a good one. I really enjoyed it.
Was that moment planned in terms of him turning his back to you and the Bruce,
yes,
as we referred to him here, the Bruce lunging him, and you just had like a moment of heat, or you just said yes, but or of course a rehearse, and it just kind of came to you?
Well, his plans, like ignoring me and going over to taunt at the other English general, was planned, but me getting that angry wasn't. And Bruce was like, "Hey, this is a character moment. Go do it. Go be your character." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh yeah, I mean those moments I love. I love those moments. Those are moments I mentioned previously in a couple podcasts, but obviously when usually it happens with an accident, like getting chokeslammed or getting hit or bopped or missing something, like missing a move on the board or whatever, where you just have that moment where you just gotta, you know what, F it, we're doing it live, and you take to the character and you just make it. You make a moment, a fair moment.
Those are the best moments.
Yeah. Did you have a moment like that where it was an accident and you just kind of stood up to the occasion and just, you know what, we're owning it and we're doing it?
That's a good question, because I don't remember if I've ever had a like whoops moment. I think as far as fight goes, as far as like fight choreography, I have before, and that was with that was actually the next year in 2016 with Supernome, my fight partner. And it was kind of a whoops. Okay, let's just go with it. I think I had dropped a weapon, or I had forgotten a move, and it was his first year fighting, or his first year doing any kind of fair stuff, and so I kind of had to take the reins and be like, okay, all right, we're doing it live, and I kind of had to finagle it. But I don't think I've ever had those like whoops moments on the board. I definitely have had them out in the lanes when we're like performing for people and acting as our characters. I've definitely had those whoops moments where I've been like, oh well, I guess we're rolling with it. It usually comes in the form of peasants running up to me and saying, "Hold this," or "We need you to do something quick," and I'm like, "All right."
Right.
But those moments are,
of course,
go ahead.
Difference between improv and the fight part, but that happens all the time in the lanes.
Yeah.
And then of course you mentioned he played Superman, but just cut the context. He was amazing too. He was a natural as well. Just kind of looked like it up. You fought twice though. I kind of felt that was weird. It happens.
I mean,
but you did.
It does happen. Yeah.
Fight the proper King Arthur year. But you also did you guys also do the next year, or was it the year before?
No, 2016 was uh,
That was his first, so it would
Rich,
be next.
Richard the Lionheart year. That was his first year.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was Pierre Pan, which was, if I can say that now, my
Hmm.
favorite character I've ever played. Um, 2016 was my favorite year up to date. I had the most fun. I because Pierre was a peasant. He was a peasant archer who was the rebelling side's only crossbowman. That was the joke that I. It was the only one that Count Emir could afford,
Hmm.
and so I was the only crossbowman. But I was also the cook, so I fought with a frying pan. And
As it
so,
was back then,
as
like a
indeed,
surgeon.
yep. Um, so I played Pierre Pan, and I had the most fun. I could do literally anything I wanted to do. I went to the children's realm, and I did like hilarious fourth wall breaking jokes, and then I would be this sniveling, scheming jerk on the chessboard, and cowardly, and like a snake, just slithering in between people, not trying to fight anyone. And then it ended up with me being the Kingslayer. I killed the king in the end, Richard the Lionheart, um,
Yep.
which was a victory in my opinion. Uh,
And a
so
death
I
that
yeah,
took hours to actually happen.
exactly. And then it ended the day with a live flaying of me, because the mercenaries were very upset that I had killed their source of income. So they took Pierre out and brought vengeance upon him, which was very strange for a family show. But hey, the kids loved it.
Yeah, sometimes we have those bits where you either get a letter or you get pulled aside. I
Yep, yep.
last time definitely had one of those moments. Um, but for the weirdest thing too. But actually, I remember. Did you get any letters for that or anything of that nature for that
I
specific bit?
didn't. Me personally, I did not, but I think they had gotten some concerning letters, with the violence that happened, because kids were like trying to eat the special effects things, the little bits of fake flesh that we were throwing. It was a three-man job. There was me, and then the whip master, the guy who used the whip to flay me, and then there was someone hiding behind this wall, and he would throw these fake blood-soaked, chunks of meat out up in the air, and they would fall to the ground, and kids would actually like run up and try to eat them. Um, so I think they got some sort of like, hey, that was pretty violent, but we did it the entire run of the show. Like it was the end, the thing we did at the very end of the day. So we were never told to stop, and I had a blast doing it. Uh, I could sleep because I was pretending to be dead, so I kind of just took a nap. Um,
Yeah,
so that was a fun bit. But yeah, that entire year was just, we got away with so much, and I think that's how we kind of, 2017 Arthur year, we kind of made it more family friendly, more like, kid version of Arthur.
right.
Everyone lives in the end. So yeah.
You had the Sith, which I was one of. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. For me, my first time of getting a letter was as King Alfred. The obviously the site
Yeah, I heard
the show
about
that we
this.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show getting a letter saying that we were trying to spread Christian propaganda. We were too Christian, and I'm
Wow.
like, did do you know who King Alfred was? Do you know the
Yeah.
Saxons and the whole point of their existence?
The
Like,
whole reason why Guthrum didn't die, because he was baptized, and that's the only reason he lived.
and
So
also, I mean, okay, so you got the Saxons. They are Catholic, and
mhm.
the Danes, as they were the Great Heathen Army, as they were called, were
Yep.
quote unquote pagan, quote unquote Norse.
Yeah.
They had a variety of different people, mixes, and all that hip rock and jazz in there. So a mix of different religions, but they also were very specifically hell bent, to use that word, on propagating in the same way the Saxons were. Literally same argument, different side. So
Mhm.
like, I get the letter. for being, yes, a very, very strict, I'll say, because he's king. He has to. Very strict
Yeah.
code of conduct for his faith character, as every king of that sort is. And not Guthrum over here. Not Guthrum
Who
for spreading his pagan ways. But that was
and
my
it talks about like blood angels and all that, you know. Well,
Mhm,
there's something I could say about that, but I don't want to get too like, you know, too crazy
mhm.
into the deep talk on this. But I have
Yeah,
my
no,
own views about that. But you know,
yeah,
it is a
and of
little
course,
ridiculous.
yeah, of course, next year I get it for the whole opposite reason. But
Yeah.
but even though it was literally just a joke and everyone realized it was just a joke, it's just it
Mhm.
takes one Karen to be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you don't know. It's okay. Let me explain it to you."
Let me
But
explain.
anyhow, uh, moving on from that, of course, we did that King Arthur year, which was a proper King Arthur year, not Return to
Yeah.
Avalon, which was very confusing. Um, but although the King Arthur year was confusing too, right? That was supposed to be Morgan Le Fay versus Merlin. That was supposed to be Morgan Le Fay's and the actress or the actor. They're all actors. Let's not gender it. The actor's year to be queen, the year to this is your festival. This is your year, and
Mhm.
then it kind of weirdly dissolved from there. But um, you got to play Arthur the Younger,
I did.
and very much a sword in the stone Arthur. So how was that from your perspective, playing that character who's may or may not be historical, but is absolutely as well known as Spider-Man?
Right. Um, well, it was definitely a challenge to portray a 12-year-old as a 21-year-old.
Yes, so very Hollywood.
I've always it's it was easier because I do have a little bit of a baby face, you know. I had a high pitched voice. Hi, I'm Arthur. You know, I'm Wart. Actually, people call me Wart. But you know, it was a bit more. The reason why I didn't say King Arthur was my favorite year because why wouldn't that be? It's you're Arthur, you know. It's great. You know, you should be that should be the best thing ever. Well, it was very fun, and I was very happy because they actually approached me at the end of 2016. They came up to me, the directors, and were like, "Hey, are you doing it next year?" I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Can you be King Arthur?" I was like, "Yes." So I was very happy to be picked. You know, at the end of the year we just did. Um, but it was more challenging because I had an image to keep. You know, I couldn't just go off and do the most ridiculous thing or you know be out of character and say something you know crazy. I had to be childlike. I had to be youthful. I had to have this kind of wonder in my eyes all the time. So it was a lot more character work than I had previously done. Um,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed it. You know, I liked being Arthur. I liked going around happily skipping. You know, being oblivious to young Guinevere's advances.
The animals.
Having the animals, yeah, having the repertoire with Sir Kay, which was my fight partner I had in 2016, and he was my fight partner again for 2017, which I thought was fine. You know, we worked well. I think everyone appreciates a fight with a height difference. He's like
Yes.
6'3", and I'm just barely scraping 5'7". So it was a really cool, uh, you know, size advantage fight. We tried to make it because you know they were half brothers. Uh, I tried to make it to where it was a Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight. You know, a lot of that imagery in there, and I actually got a really cool picture of us doing like a clash where we would like clash against each other, holding our swords, trying to you know break the other one.
Yeah.
Um, that fight was really fun to do because it was a lot of you know Sir Kay is experienced in fighting. Arthur is not. How do we make Arthur survive for any amount of time against this guy? So it was a lot of I channeled a lot of Hiccup energy into him as well. Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon.
Speaking of Hiccup,
Um,
uh, let's use that as a launching point as we kind of narrow down in the time frame. Of course, you specifically are also known for not just doing the fair, and you've done theater as well, and other
mm,
things, but cosplay. You have your own cosplay, as we mentioned at the head of the show. Caleb's
indeed.
underscore cosplay. How did you get into that?
I got into that after, I believe, after about 2017. I was like, man, I have all these costume pieces from doing the fair over the years. How about I use them outside of that? And I started piecing stuff together. My first posted public cosplay was a Scottish assassin from the series Assassin's Creed. Uh, there hadn't been a Scottish assassin up until that point, like any official Scottish assassin. So I was like, let me take a kilt, let me make my own hidden blade, and I went to MetroCon and I showed it off, and that's what I'm most known for is my Scottish assassin. Since then, I've branched off into different Assassin's Creed characters. I've done Spider-Man. I've done How to Train Your Dragon. Um, so that was a big launching point for me. But it started because I had all the costume pieces from the fair,
Yeah.
and I wanted to use them for something other than that. I wanted to use them for all they were worth. So
Right. Now
yeah.
for things that aren't specifically medieval, because obviously it's a lot easy to put something together like a Raid Shadow Legends cosplay or something like Hiccup with what we do
Yeah.
or medieval stuff you accrue over the years. However, obviously you did Spider-Man, you do a couple other things that are specifically not medieval. Uh,
Mhm.
how do you pull that together, like the costuming or the idea of what you're going to do? Because I myself am literally only just now starting doing that. I just
Mhm.
purchased for three different characters, and I've always had a Slytherin stuff put together because they're doing the Harry Potter thing. But
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do a photo shoot specifically for that, and I'm gonna do something for Valhalla. But how does that come together for you in terms of concept and getting the material for something that's not specifically what we do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I've always been super into medieval stuff, video games, movies, acting, all that. But I'm a big sci-fi fan too. I like Halo. I like Star Wars. Yeah, I like, I play some StarCraft. So trying to find sci-fi looking things is pretty tough because my mindset isn't focused on that for costuming. However, one of my characters is a Force user from the High Republic era of Star Wars, the Legends, not canon, unfortunately. Um, and I was like, well, back then, in their old Republic, High Republic era, they had a lot of leathers, they had a lot of cloth. They didn't have a whole lot of metal looking stuff. So I was like, well, I can just use um, some medieval pieces, and I purchased a couple of just a belt, a Star Wars belt, a lightsaber, obviously. But I think it went together fairly well. Like it looks something out of the Star Wars universe with a little bit of, a long time ago in a far, far away
Yeah,
galaxy kind of vibe. So,
yeah. For me,
but
I've oh, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. In the same vein, obviously for the ones that I'm piecing together are very specific characters, with exception
Mhm.
of the Slytherin thing, which white shirt, black pants, Slytherin tie. There you go.
Yeah.
Although I have a custom wand, but which actually was from the fair that we do. But obviously did Spider-Man, and for the specific characters like myself, the ones that I got are on kind of a mix between Etsy and Amazon. Where did you get your Spider-Man thing? Because it's very detailed.
Oh yeah, my spider suit is from Zentai Zone. It's a type of suit called a Zentai suit. And
Right.
it was fairly expensive. I actually had to do a lot of modifications to the face shell because the face shell was very big, and it
Yeah.
had it had very sharp corners on the cheekbones for some strange reason. So I actually took a Dremel and
Oh,
I shaved it down. Um, but yeah, and I use there's nice firm rubber soles on the bottom, but I couldn't really wear shoes inside the thing, so I had to double up on socks.
yeah.
I made sure to get a dance belt, to help with any uh, danglies. Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
um,
yeah. Do you
but
have a
I haven't.
list? Sorry. Do you have a list
No, go ahead.
of a list? I'll let you finish, but do you have a list to think about after? Do you have a list of ones that you want to do, characters you want to cosplay, or time frames you want to do?
Yes, absolutely yes. It's pretty ambitious. I've been cosplaying for about 3 years now, but I don't think I'm quite on the expert level. You know,
Mhm.
I
Oh,
I,
no
I
worries.
I mainly work with leathers and fabrics, but I definitely want to start getting into more EVA foam, plastics. I want to do a Halo Spartan cosplay. I would love to
Mhm.
do a Mass Effect cosplay. Um, another Star Wars character. I like to do more. I need to do more named licensed characters because I
Yes.
think I haven't run my original character bank dry, but it's getting a little stale. I need
Mhm.
to spruce it up with more named characters. So I want to do some. Um, I was told I look like Will Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean, which hey, look,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
not exactly medieval, but it's in that time frame. You know what people would expect to see. I definitely want to do a Will Turner cosplay. I would love to do another Spider-Man suit. I have a lot of plans, and enacting on them, I think, is the biggest challenge for me because I'm just so busy and I don't have the resources that a lot of professional cosplayers have. I'm not making money on it basically. So it's
Yeah.
hard to really devote myself to a cosplay when I know that I have to, spend money on all of this. I have to take the time to build it. That's my biggest foil right now.
Same thing in the vein of I'll go in order of what we talked about for Star Wars. Obviously, we all love Star Wars. So I've got
Mm.
an idea. Obviously, I would like to do a Han Solo cosplay.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
not particularly a big Han Solo person, but I love his outfit. So I definitely want the
Yeah,
outfit. But not just Han Solo, but I want to do a smuggler or a scoundrel. I want to do a bounty hunter, and I want to do obviously the Dark Jedi. But for all of those three, two, no, three, yeah, smuggler, bounty hunter, and Dark Jedi, I just want to go on Etsy, all these custom made stuff, and just
yes,
piece together various Star Wars inspired mixed with actual Star Wars prop stuff and create an
yeah,
original character in the universe. Like Mando is an original character that they created within the universe.
yeah.
Um, just something like that, and just launch off that. But I also want to do like I have my list right here, and I just went, what do I love, and or what do I think would be fun to do or cool or so me, or looking at Etsy, seeing props that people make that are kind of obscure. Like on Etsy, there's people that make the amulet from Secret of Nim, and I'm like,
Oh, that's so cool.
that's kind of a stretch. I love Secret of Nim is something that I could watch like every day and not tire of it for some reason.
Right.
But I'm like, you know
That
what?
was that was one of my favorite films as a kid.
If I bought that necklace, I would totally do a Justin cosplay. Not that
Yeah,
he held the necklace at any given moment, but I mean, who else am I gonna play? It would be Justin. It's simple tunic and like a jerkin or something, belt, no
yeah.
pants, no pants because he's a rat. But
He's right.
something like for a named character, I would love to do like once upon a time I played Rumpelstiltskin. Um,
Oh, nice.
from
Yeah, that's another big challenge for me. Besides the time and the creative process, I'm still stuck in this mindset of if I get something, it has to be useful for multiple things.
yes,
So I always
yes,
feel weird about buying materials that I can't use in a performance. If I get like, oh man, this character's, armor, that's really big and I couldn't make that out of real armor. Let me just buy foam. But I'm like, well, then this will be
mhm,
the only purpose for it. So I feel
same.
like I'm wasting So I think as a cosplayer, I need to uh, not break out of the habit, but be a little more relaxed towards that line of
Yeah,
thinking. If something needs foam or plastics, I think it's okay to be able to spend some money on it and shape it and form it. If I'm especially dedicated to a cosplay, um, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, to be
for a
able to make sense because
character,
people do
a
it all the
specific
time. Our
character.
character, exactly,
But
yeah,
but I want to do like specific characters, and honestly, you and Kat, of course, I want to mention her, love her. Um, you, Kat, Carly, have inspired me to take this route, this little path, because I see what you guys post and the people that you follow on Instagram, and watching all these high quality things you do, and Angela, Natalie, just to put some amazing names out there. the things that you put on Instagram and the stuff you do at cons specifically, I'm like, I need to do that.
That's
One
awesome.
of us.
Wow,
One of us.
I'm glad we
Y'all
can
inspire me.
inspire you to do that, man.
So I'm like, yep,
That's
one of us.
great.
One of us. One of
One
us.
of us. Yes, please.
So
Cool,
yeah, you
dude.
guys, anyone that listens that isn't already part of our show, if you know them in terms of Instagram that I've mentioned, give them a follow because they'll come by in terms of people we have here on the channel, and then suggestions on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, y'all do some high quality stuff. You should be known for it. Should be more popular in the cause community.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm definitely trying. It's been a struggle to see a
Yeah,
lot of stagnation for the past year and a half. I haven't even hit 1,000 followers, and I'm not one to be like, I need more followers, but I am a little, well, what's going on? What can I do to change the algorithm? How do I
exactly.
grow from here?
So I don't know what the Instagram algorithm is. I know the Instagram thing has tags. I know it helps to have people like us retweeting, but quote. I don't know what the Instagram is version of retweeting.
Sharing, yeah, sharing,
Sharing.
posting on stories, all
Honestly,
that.
I'll always share your stuff. Always put a like. Always do a comment. I know that absolutely, especially with sharing and the heart, will get you out there. But I know the tags are a
Yeah,
big thing. Like things like Twitch. Twitch actively pushes people down. Unless
yeah,
you're already thousands of thousands of blah blah blah. YouTube doesn't. I mean, YouTube obviously favors high profile channels and a good community, specifically, more importantly, on YouTube with just even just 10,000. But I've noticed other medieval people that are doing what we do. Just I haven't been able to put back on the channel yet. Can make about 1 million subscribers. It's all about
yeah.
building your community very specifically.
Well, that's actually a really good segue. I'm not sure what else you wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if you had any other questions, and I'm not sure if you want to hear, um, plans that I have in the future. I don't know if that pertains to this episode. Um,
By all means, the episode specifically is about you. So by all
oh,
means,
well, thank you. Well, I am. It's still in the works. But I am very happy to announce that I'm going to be starting a full contact foot tournament fight troupe with several close friends. We are it. It's a brainchild of our mutual friend Colin. You know him.
he's a
Um,
regular on the show.
he's Yep. This is his brainchild. He's been thinking over about this all last year. And it's not going to be the kind of big hitting action that you see from large HEMA groups and Boo Hurt, um, where you see 30 knights all in a ring just smashing on each other. It's going to be acting centered, show centered, but with real, combats, real unrehearsed, unscripted, fighting. Um, obviously safety's first. We're looking at very high quality gear right now, stuff that people in these HEMA groups use. But this is something that has just absolutely ignited a huge flaming burning passion in my fire. As soon as Colin told me, my eyes just lit up. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing.
Yeah,
And I think this is going to become my niche. And I think once we get the ball rolling on this, I'm going to see a lot of growth.
yeah,
That's where a lot of my time and energy is going to go to now. I want to get several cosplays finished before then, because I know that once we start being in this group and we actually start going to places, I'm not going to have time for
yeah,
anything. And not to say that I won't ever cosplay again, but I think this is going to be a way to have a good time with my medieval passions and hobbies while also being active. It's a sport. I'm still acting. It's really exciting stuff. And obviously,
good.
we can't do it this year because we have medieval fair to do. But come 2022, this thing is launching, and I
Yeah.
couldn't be more excited. So
a great launching point from what we already do, and I think that's amazing. Colin is amazing, and yourself, Zach, too. So anything you guys need, don't even hesitate. It's a yes. Um,
I
but uh,
appreciate that, man. I really do.
beyond that, I think we've pretty much rounded out a lot of coverage in terms of what we do for the festival, drawing from medieval history, specifically cosplay. I was definitely interested to talk about that since I've just started,
Mhm.
and a few other things. Uh, that's pretty much it. But in finality, is there anything else beyond that? Of course, which you just announced that you wanted to talk about or mention.
Nothing comes to mind. I'm sure once the show, I'm sure once we stop recording, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, there's like 30 other things. But
Yeah.
no, I feel like we covered a lot. I really appreciate you, talking to me, asking me all these questions.
Hmm.
It's really cool to look back on my years in the medieval fair and see all the good times I've had. There were some rough times too, but the
Yeah.
good outweighs the bad, and I'm really
Yeah.
happy to be able to look back with someone like you. A good friend, someone who I've performed with multiple times. Um, and it's fun to reminisce. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's it for me, man.
Indeed. Likewise, likewise. So let me go ahead and close it out with my little written epilogue. And of course, if ever you want to talk about anything else or have a subject you want to talk about specifically, obviously the Discord is for everyone, and podcast is for everyone too. So let me know, Amy know, and we'll chat it up. But beyond that, and that is it for this episode of the Talk Past podcast. Of course, thank you for being on again. You did the first show, Caleb, from Caleb's underscore cosplay. Thank you for being this and talking.
Absolutely, great to be here, man. I'm hoping to do it again soon.
Indeed, anytime. And that'll be that. Bippity bop.